All right, it's been a minute. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Brothers YouTube channel. My name is Blake, and I'm here with my younger brother, Carson. As you can see here, we've got a tier list going. We're going through the top through the bottom, all 32 teams of quarterbacks for this fantasy football season. Carson, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. It's a face reveal for you, so that's exciting for the channel.
Oh yeah, and, I've been forgetting to look at the camera.
Oh, it's all right. You get to see it now. And then for me, as I take out my headphone, this is my second face reveal, I guess you could say. But yeah, I'm excited for this QB tier ranking. We'll be doing an RB tier list, a wide receiver tier list, and a tight end tier list basically every single Monday is our plan right now, but at least throughout the rest of the preseason. And yeah, we're deciding to do it in a way that it's not like your most conventional ranking in fantasy. It's more like tiers, as we have said. So we have elite as the first tier, the top of the top. And of course, this is all in regards to fantasy, not regards to the player per se, although there's plenty of overlap there. The second tier being QB1. This is basically everyone else remaining in the elite in the top 12 in our eyes. Bye week fill-in, that would be if your main QB has a bye, you'd be happy with these guys to come in and fill in if they have a good matchup. And then waivers or players right now, we're not seeing a good chance of actually making your roster and just would remain on the waivers. You got anything else to add with how we're doing this?
Yeah, I would say for waivers specifically, I'm kind of looking at this from the perspective of coming out of the draft, who's likely to be on waivers.
Yeah.
So we're about a month away. I mean, we're I guess, the time of day is different, but we're about 1 month away exactly from our league draft, our main league draft. So
yeah, on Labor Day.
Like Carson said, we're going to be going through all the fantasy relevant positions throughout the month of August, and then come September, we're getting into our regularly scheduled program, so to speak. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go in order here, which I believe is based by last name alphabetical.
Yeah, other than Geno Smith and Drew Lock at the end, but yeah, we'll just get to them at the end. But other than that, it should be alphabetized.
Spoiler alert, those guys are on the waivers.
Well, at least for you. And something to clarify, which for me too, I'm not going to keep that joke going. We both made these lists separately, and he's seen my list. I haven't seen his. And we're basically going to kind of discuss where we think we should put them together. So it's not a conjoined list, but our final product in this video essentially will be. So yeah.
Yeah, and the whole reason I saw his list and he hasn't seen mine is because I didn't want to influence the boy with my opinions. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start with Josh Allen. I think this is an easy one to start. We're putting him smack dab at the top of elite.
Yeah, easily elite. I think back-to-back season as QB1 back-to-back seasons as QB1, and I mean, he's going into his 5th year. There's no reason to think he can't do it again. He's a very safe QB. If you want to go early, he's going to get you a good return, barring injury.
Yeah, of course. Top end in rushing and just slings the ball. So
yeah, literally both
a great option there. Yeah.
So that was simple.
Very simple. Let's go with Tom Brady. And so, knowing that our lists are different, I don't think it's going to surprise you, but I have Tom Brady at elite. And the reason is this. He led the league in passing yards last season at the age of 44. He's got 2 borderline wide receiver ones in Evans and Godwin. And I don't see any indication that that's going to change this year, that he won't be susceptible or has the potential to finish as QB1.
Yeah, I mean, I have him in QB1, and I thought about putting him in elite. I really did. I think for me, I don't know how many people ended up in your elite. It only ended up being 3 quarterbacks for me, as we'll get there. I just can't imagine drafting Brady over so many of those guys. Last year, I went back and did like a median of pretty much every single player, fantasy-wise, rather than the mean, which is given to you. Brady had the best median, so that would actually be higher than Allen, who finished above him by just mean fantasy scoring. So he definitely has that potential. We know the player he is. He's the GOAT in the position, I think, just undeniably. But I think for
Yes.
me, it's difficult for me to draft him over some of these younger guys that have a rushing upside and could even get better in other areas of their game. I mean, Brady has the weapons. He really does. So I don't fault you for putting him at elite, and I'm okay with putting him there. But I think he's still more of that safe but low-end QB1 and more in my eyes.
Let's talk about Joe Burrow. So I'm going to have him hovering here for a minute. I don't think he belongs in elite yet. I think you would agree with me on that. You've said to me off camera, everyone needs to slow their roll on Joe Burrow praise, and he led them to the Super Bowl, couldn't get it done ultimately, but he had a fantastic season, and you'd be happy to have him on your fantasy roster, and I think that's why we can comfortably put him in QB1.
Comfortably put him at QB1, and I really like Burrow too, but I think whenever you start putting him ahead of other guys that I think have much more fantasy potential, he right now, I think I would probably have him at QB7. Like, he's definitely top 8 for me, and whereas his ADP is 5th, like, that's not a big difference, but, we'll get into this player later. I would never take him ahead of Kyler Murray. That's one example for me, and he's ahead of him in ADP. So, that's one example.
Yeah, no, and I agree with everything you said there. I think that he obviously has the weapons around him to make another step up, but I also think that there are guys ahead of him, especially when you do consider ADP, that I think provide more of a guarantee to be a top 3, top 5 finish than Burrow does. And it's going to be a minute with this list.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a moment before we get someone who can maybe compete ahead of him, because I think the next few are kind of middle of the pack to lower end. So let's start with Derek Carr, who part of your AFC West. Where does he belong in your mind?
I think pretty comfortably he's a bye week fill-in, but he could be on the top end of that list potentially, just because of the new connection of Devontae Adams and continuing the connection with Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. Like, he's got the weapons. The one thing about him that doesn't make him a great fantasy quarterback is that it was almost comical during our analysis through matchup previews last season. It's like he never threw more than 2 passing touchdowns. I don't know if he literally never did, but it felt like it, and he might have, because he just does not throw a lot of passing touchdowns.
Twice. I think it was only once or twice in the whole season, maybe.
Fantasy-wise, for a player that doesn't provide a lot of mobility as far as upside for fantasy points, you need to be throwing 3 passing touchdowns a lot more consistently, at least, than what Derek Carr does. But I think he provides a safe floor that you would be okay with in a bye week fill-in situation.
Agreed with that. I think, when we get through the rest of this, there's really so we're using QB1. If you're familiar with that term, it's referencing to the number of teams in the league. So if it's a QB1 in a 10-team league, that means the top 10 quarterbacks. If it's 12-team, that's the top 12. The way it works out this year, I think we both kind of agreed that 12 players belong in QB1. So that's how we're doing this list, and we'll go ahead and move on with Kirk Cousins, who kind of similar things with Derek Carr. I think he just kind of belongs as a bye week fill-in. He did perform well last season. He was top 10-ish, top 12, but there are many players ahead of him that kind of bump him out this year, I think.
I have a lot of similar feelings towards my projections and outlooks for Cousins as I do with Carr. I prefer Cousins slightly more, at least going into the season. If Carr is like this new quarterback throwing a ton of more touchdowns because of Devontae Adams, that could sway me. But I think Kirk Cousins is in the same bye week fill-in. I agree with that, but even safer than Carr.
Yeah.
To me,
okay.
Going into the season.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that too. So I'm going to go ahead and put him ahead of Carr right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Justin Fields. Now, you and I had different feelings about him.
Okay.
I say he's a bye week fill-in, and the reason is the upside that he provides rushing the ball and an extra, season under his legs. Like, I think he's going to be able to be in that category where, given the matchup, like, he's in a pretty cake division in terms of if he's playing the Lions on the week that you have your quarterback on bye, throw Justin Fields, and I think you'll feel fine about that.
I do have him near the top of my waivers. I'm actually fine, again, to go with your ranking at the bottom of bye week fill-in is where I probably feel like we'll end up being. The upside with his legs does provide another level of fantasy value that I think probably does get him off of the waivers, at least at some point during the season.
Yeah.
And, I don't like his lack of weapons, and I don't think they've done a whole lot to really rebuild his team around him. But Darnell Mooney is solid. Cole Kmet's taking on a bigger role. He doesn't have much more than that as far as consistent pass catchers, especially from a fantasy perspective. But his upside with his legs probably does put him at least as a bye week.
That's where the rushing upside comes in. So
I'm fine with that.
Obviously not a week-to-week starter, but I think, given the matchup, totally comfortable picking him up for a 1 week fill-in.
Yeah.
All right, fair. Let's talk about Jared Goff. QB1 or elite? What do we think of it?
I mean, to think that he's one of the few quarterbacks on here who've made a Super Bowl appearance, but that doesn't do a whole lot for me now that he's on the Lions for his second season there. He's definitely waivers for me. I don't think that he's one of the safer waivers if you're just completely desperate, but need someone to pick up, and you don't have the options of these other bye week fill-in guys that we're saying could be there. But no, he's waivers.
Maybe in a 2 quarterback league. For me, he's very, very low.
He's low.
So I don't think that there's any getting around that.
The only hope is that they are kind of giving him more weapons, but I still wouldn't trust him as a fantasy quarterback for my roster.
No, and I like some of his weapons, like Amon-Ra St. Brown and the potential for DJ Chark to come back to relevance. I think there's some good opportunity there. We don't know what's going to happen with Jameson Williams coming off an ACL tear. But those are all interesting pieces.
Too.
Hawkinson, if you play with tight ends, of course, that's a great option there. And then Deandre Swift. So I like the pieces around him a lot more than himself.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, elite.
Justin Herbert for me is elite, yes. And I think that
yes,
I have him probably. I know this goes against ADP. I like him more than Mahomes, but their ADP is very close. So I would say go with your gut. I'm not going to actually make a case to say so much against Mahomes, but I like Herbert a lot and would have him as QB2.
I actually agree with you on the organization of those players. So do you want to go ahead and throw Mahomes up on the board?
Yeah, that's fine. Because for me, those are the only 3 elite I put out there. So.
Okay, so I will say this. I don't have a problem with putting these guys ahead of Brady on our list.
Yeah.
I think for ADP purposes, Brady is your best option because of how much you can fill out your team before taking a quarterback that can still finish inside the top 3. Has the upside for that.
In every mock draft, I've never taken Allen, Herbert, or Mahomes, even though those are the 3 that I believe are elite.
It's very expensive, draft capital that you need to use to get one of those 3 guys. It's very expensive, so I'm not surprised at all by that. Jalen Hurts.
I surely we will agree QB1.
Oh
no higher,
for
no
sure.
Lower.
Yeah, it's he's got AJ Brown new to him this year. It's possible that he makes a step up, but I think last season he was still quarterback, 7 at the end?
9.
Either way, obviously a top 10 quarterback and has the potential, but it's tough. It's tough with those guys that are ahead of him for him to, I don't see a way where Jalen Hurts gets QB1 this year.
And Jalen Hurts, to me, is a much better fantasy quarterback than NFL quarterback. Because if we told you QB1, undisputed between us two, and he playing 15 games, threw 16 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, you'd be like, why? But you realize he had 784 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. And he's going into his 3rd season, so hopefully he can improve it even more. I'm not gonna. The easiest comparison to make as far as fantasy is to Lamar Jackson. I do not think Lamar Jackson is ahead of him pretty easily for me, very easily for me. But what Hurts provides to you on the ground just makes his fantasy value undisputable.
So I'll tell you right now, I actually do have Lamar as my 5th elite option.
Okay, I'm not upset with that.
That is where my elite category ends. So I'll just say this: we've seen him finish QB1 overall before back in 2019, and
MVP season, right?
Yes. And so for that reason, obviously he has the potential to finish high again. I also think for ADP reasons, he's like the 5th to 4th running back or quarterback going off boards. Yeah. Pocket running back. So, yeah. But it's kind of the same reasons that we described for Jalen Hurts. He has so much rushing upside, but he's also just a much better passer than Hurts. So he's got a very comfortable window where he can finish, and you feel good about having him on your team, I think.
For me, the only thing that kept him from elite for me, because he's at the top of QB1, not the very top, but near the top for me, is just his loss of weapons. But it doesn't hurt his rushing ability, and he still has Mark Andrews, and if Rashad Bateman can take a step up, it's really not as bad as it seems, because they never really did have a ton of great receivers on that team. They had Andrews and Hollywood Brown, and that was pretty much it fantasy relevance-wise, so it's not that big of a change. So I've been pretty agreeable to your rankings because I was teetering on them anyways, but yeah, I'm fine if Lamar being near the back end of elite.
Cool. All right, well, let's talk about Daniel Jones. I think this is another comfortable waivers position for me. You like the potential that the new head coach brings, Brian Daboll, but why don't you prove it to me? Because
is he near the top of your waivers? Yes, because I know you see my rankings. Is he near the top of your waivers for what you had? I'm just out of curiosity.
To be honest, I don't think he's kind of in the middle.
Because his ADP is extremely low. He's basically free in drafts. Just take him with your last pick, unless someone else is high on them.
Don't draft him. Why are you advocating?
I'm not saying you should draft him necessarily, but I can definitely. He's at the very end of my bye week fill-in. I just feel like he has the potential with the new coaching change. I think he has the potential to be bye week fill-in worthy, but again. I'm not really going to die on this hill, honestly. I just think that he has the potential. So, potential might be better off left on the waivers, unless your QB1 you're super confident with, and some of your backup guys you like were taken already. Maybe take a shot on Daniel Jones. That would be my perspective, but
are you talking about
I'm
in the
fine
draft?
with him being waivers too. Yes. Like, if you already have your surefire QB1, like one of these top-end guys, and you don't realistically not going to switch them out a lot, and maybe you wanted a backup of Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, but they're already gone, and then what's remaining is kind of a lot of mediocre options, I would say take a shot on Daniel Jones.
I think that's interesting because if there are... Like, how big of a league are you talking about? Because this will clear things up.
12-team, more likely.
See, I think even with a 12-team, you're still going to have the choice of Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz or Baker Mayfield.
I believe that Ryan and Wentz, for example, are safer options. Again, I'm not saying go get Daniel Jones in your in all of your drafts, but I like him. I like his upside and potential a lot more than a lot of the other waiver guys. So it's pretty low bar.
Okay.
I'd like him more than Goff because I don't see Goff doing much better than what he's doing.
Goff can be he'll be much lower on this list. Trust me. By the time we get to the end of it, Goff will be very low.
Daniel Jones has said some changes that I like the potential. And that's all in my eyes, that's all you're looking for at the very end if you're waiting that long for another quarterback.
Okay, so I want to give you some perspective moving forward on what I did for bye week fill-in. I have 6 players in there, and one of them is Desean Watson, and that's a big if right now. I'm going to go ahead and throw him up there.
Yeah, that's fine. I put him in that too, but it's like I don't even know where you put him here. He could almost be elite if he's playing every game, but he's also could be out the entire season.
We know that he's not going to be, but if he is suspended and also eligible to play this season, then he's a bye week fill-in. If he's suspended 12 games or longer, then you have very few options. Like, you can fill him in for the very first week he's eligible to play for Kyler. And that's
I see what you mean, because the first 6 games he would only be there's like the first bye week is week 6, so yes. I see what you mean by that logic. He wouldn't be missing out on bye week, so then he's automatically a bye week fill-in. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, so, and if he misses the entire season, then obviously he's a waiver unless you're in a dynasty league or something. But in all redraft leagues, if he's suspended the whole year and that doesn't get appealed, because, the whole process is a big mess. We've talked about it kind of ad nauseum off camera, but it just seems like, currently there's not a lot of certainty. This is being recorded on August 5th for context, but yeah, it just seems like if he does play at some point this year, he's no better than a bye week fill-in because of how much time he's expected to miss.
Due to our different criterion for where we're putting them, I agree. If you only want to put a few bye week fill-in because those are the only sure guys, then yeah, Daniel Jones is on the waivers. He's at the very end of my bye week fill-in, and I have 10 there. So
I see that.
That tells you anything. So
let's go to Mack Jones, which, interestingly, you have him in bye week fill-in.
But I'm sure you don't, because you only have 6 bye week fill-in. He's not in my top 6 for bye week fill-in. So if we're doing it that way, he's near the top of waivers for me, because I think he has a safe floor, but a pretty low ceiling. Just because, this new fantasy Brady 20 years into his career is a lot to do with the fact that he's not... I know he's had amazing seasons before, but going into his Tampa Bay season, no one assumed that he would do what he did, especially last year. So I don't really trust a Patriots quarterback. The Patriots, in my time playing fantasy, Bill does not care about fantasy, and he plays his players in that way. Not that other coaches do care, but just the way that Bill manages his team, it's not conducive to fantasy football.
That doesn't have anything to do with quarterback, though. That's really all about the other positions. Well, because, and
it's more for Mack Jones.
Not putting out... The fact is that Mack Jones just doesn't have the weapons around him. And Mack Jones is not Tom Brady not 2.0, obviously. No one will ever be that, but Mack Jones is not even half the player that Brady is, but he's very, very young. He hasn't really had a chance to develop yet. So he performed really well in his rookie year. I don't want to, misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in terms of fantasy quarterbacks, Mack Jones is not in the conversation of a week-to-week starter, or even someone that, obviously, the matchup makes sense. Then you pick him up if you are desperate, but I think that there are much better options ahead of him.
Yeah, with how Belichick is more about Patriots in general, not as much about the quarterback. I agree with that. But it's also more that Mack Jones doesn't have the rushing upside on top of being a new quarterback that's working in his usage.
You saw him in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, when nobody was even trying. You know how the Pro Bowl goes. You're only caring about that because it's a Patriots player. No.
Hey, it was exciting. He hit the gritty.
Yeah. And somehow became the face of the gritty whenever he's one of the latest people to do it. It's so stupid. It was cheeky. It was cheeky.
Oh, yeah. Agreed there. Let's go ahead and move on.
So, waivers,
Trey Lance. Yes. Trey Lance, I've got
Lance
top
for
of
me.
bye-week fill-in.
Completely agree. Completely agree with
and
that.
here's the reason why. We don't know if it's legit, so I don't feel comfortable taking him as my first quarterback off the board for my team. If you've come out of your draft and the first quarterback you drafted was Trey Lance, I feel a little nervous about that because you don't know what to expect right off the bat. He has tremendous rushing upside. Deebo Samuel's under contract, and some San Francisco running back is going to have relevance. Maybe it's Eli Mitchell, maybe it's the new rookie, but you still have George Kittle, you still have Brandon Ayuk. There's weapons around him, so if he can develop into a hybrid quarterback, proficient in passing and running the ball. He's gonna be borderline QB1.
Yeah, and I completely agree with all of that. I wouldn't want him to be my QB1, but I think he is the best in that bye week fill-in category just for what it means. I think that
Agreed.
he is, yeah. So I completely agree with that. Top of bye week fill-in.
Mm-hmm. Depending on the size of your league, I understand if you want Trevor Lawrence to be your second quarterback drafted, that would make him, by definition, a bye week fill-in. I think that there are enough quarterbacks ahead of him, especially in a 10-team league, that you can take and have Lawrence on your waivers still. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on him? Anything
I think
more
he's
than
near
that?
the back end of bye week fill-in for me. But with the way you did it, he'd be at the top of waivers. So I think he's worthy of a bye week fill-in though, just because strength of schedule at the very beginning of the season can always be a little interesting,
Mm-hmm.
but he does have a really easy schedule for quarterbacks, and
Okay.
that's not I think that
Do you like him more than Justin Fields?
I do. I like
Okay.
that Justin Fields has the ability to rush more than Lawrence, but Lawrence isn't horrible. He's still at 334 rushing yards. Like, that's not nothing. But
Right.
he got a new wide receiver. He got the running back that could be, good for short receptions for him that they drafted going into... Was he also Clemson?
Clemson teammate.
Yes. So
Yeah.
is that an ex-teammate in Etienne? So I think that chemistry will be great. They even got Evan Ingram, if they can revive something out of his career. And if they can't, they got Dan Arnold, who was actually consistent.
Yes,
So
yeah.
they put things around him. And you got to remember that this was the quarterback taken 101 in the real draft, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think he had a tough start of his career, but so did a lot of other quarterbacks that ended up having a great career.
Well, Jacksonville's done a good job in terms of the offseason, bringing in new talent to help with Trevor Lawrence and his progression as a starter. So I don't have a problem with putting him in the bye week fill-in. I will say that he was the very top of my waivers. So we're kind of doing a hybrid list. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely on the edge of being that bye week fill-in category. Depending on the size of your league, it makes sense. So I'm fine with him being in there.
Yeah.
Marcus Mariota, I don't think anyone's drafting Mariota.
No. Waivers.
I mean, above here, I mean, I think he's below both of those guys, Daniel Jones and Mack Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if Matt Ryan couldn't get it done, I think that Matt Ryan, what he has left in him still as a quarterback is still more than what Mariota, even though he's much younger. And if Matt Ryan couldn't do it fantasy-wise last year or NFL-wise, I have no reason to suspect that Marcus Mariota could do it.
So do you want to throw Matt Ryan in bye week fill-in, or you think still waivers for him? Like, where does he fall with Daniel and Mac Jones?
So, for me, he's above Daniel Jones, but behind Mac Jones. But I, at one point, had him above Mac Jones. I think that he's, again, near the end of bye week fill-in or top of waivers, because I do like his having the weapons of Michael Pittman Jr. as well as Jonathan Taylor, which can help him for short receptions, and just having a good running back makes it a better offense, which is good for him. And I think he has a very safe floor. He's still throwing for a ton of passing yards. What's your perspective on that, if you're ranking it amongst those other two players?
So I'm just trying to adjust it on screen here for everybody. So for top of waivers, we've got Mac Jones, then Matt Ryan, then Daniel Jones, then Mariota, and then Goff. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield, new addition to the Carolina Panthers. For me, he shouldn't go drafted, so I have him in waivers, but I can understand an argument for bye week fill-in. I see on your board here that you have him as a clear waiver.
Yeah, he's a waiver for me. I think he's got DJ Moore, which I think is a great receiver. Again, got McCaffrey, which should make it a better offense, assuming he stays healthy. But I mean, I'm reading reports that he hasn't even clearly beaten out Sam Darnold in training camp. So it's like, I'm sure he will be the starter, but like...
so impossible to me.
But that's what I mean. He should... I know he almost certainly will be the starter, but, you know, if something goes wrong, if you have the round 1, pick 3, and round 1, pick 1 quarterback from the same draft now on the same team years down the line, something went wrong with one of them, if not both. So...
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Darnold was the worst of the two, and that's why it shouldn't be really a question that Baker becomes QB1 in that team. But, you know, it's that time of year still where all the stories, you know, have, I think, less merit to them than whenever the season's actually going on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Davis Mills. I think, you know, for me, kind of just a middle of the pack. I don't think he really warrants being a bye week fill-in personally. I would just, you know, throw him up there somewhere on waivers and feel fine with that.
Yeah, he kind of quietly had a decent median last season, especially out of rookie quarterbacks, but I don't want to invest in him, especially on that offense. So,
yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm not saying that the player is horrible or, like, you know, you can't ever use them, but I would think, you know, there's got to be a good amount of options ahead of him that you'd feel better with.
Agreed.
So let's talk about Kyler Murray. We both have him in high to mid QB1 status. I'll tell you, he's the top of my QB1. He's the top of your QB1. So I think we can comfortably put him here and move on.
Yeah, and I'm fine with, you know, I have Lamar slightly behind him, but, you know, I think he definitely could finish above him. I just like Kyler's weapons more, which I think makes me feel safer about drafting him that high. But, yeah, I wouldn't fault you for following ADP and taking Lamar ahead of him.
Yeah, and so part of the reason that I did rank Lamar ahead of Kyler, when you actually look at his history here, he has no season with more than 26 passing touchdowns. And then the year that he did finish third overall, he had 11 rushing touchdowns, 26 passing touchdowns. So it was his absolute best year, and he still finished third. So not quite elite yet. I mean, the passing touchdown numbers have to go up. Just by comparison, you know, Lamar has had years with 36. I mean, that's 10 more passing touchdowns. Still had 7 that year. That was when he finished first overall. I get it.
Kyler getting 11 rushing touchdowns is not sustainable. That's why he had such an amazing year that year. But if he can have quite a few rushing touchdowns, not up that high, but then more passing touchdowns, that's when he starts entering that elite conversation because he is that dual threat quarterback.
Yeah, and maybe the addition of Marquise Brown will be good because, you know, it's a very talented deep threat receiver that he hasn't really had before. So he's had fast guys on his team before. And he just signed a big
contract extension, so he's going to be their franchise quarterback is what the plan is probably right now. So
yeah,
for sure.
Only
on the way up.
Right. Let's go ahead and cluster these two guys together, Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky. I'm just throwing them into waivers for now because, to be honest, you know, if you were starting Ben Roethlisberger last season, something had to have gone horribly wrong. And to me, neither of those guys really offer a major upgrade. So I think they both kind of belong on waivers. Pittsburgh is going to be a very run-heavy team, and your favorite player, go ahead and shout him out.
Player. I love Deontay Johnson. I've had him 2 past years at least in fantasy football, and he gets a ton of targets, which makes me happy because that means he gets a lot of receptions, and then he has a super high floor. I'm not as high on him this year, but I still think he has decent value. They have great pass catchers on that team, honestly, but that's just not going to be how that offense is ran, and we can talk about this more at the end of the video, even though it's not super high stakes. I like Kenny Pickett more than Mitchell Trubisky as far as fantasy. I bet you probably agree, but like they're right next to each other just because of who they are and what they're coming into.
Yeah, neither one. I'm definitely not drafting either one, and I'm probably looking elsewhere if I need a bye week fill-in. So
agreed.
That's why they go in waivers for me. Dak Prescott, QB1. Now, obviously, you're a little concerned with the amount of weapons that he has this season, losing Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup being hurt for the first few weeks of the season at least. So, not a lot. His offense got worse this offseason, but you still believe in the player. What else can you say about him?
Second year off ACL. So last season he had career lows in basically all rushing stats, so I expect that to go up. I think he's being drafted right before Brady at QB9 based off the ADP I'm looking at. I think that's great value again. I think he's a very safe QB1, and if you want to wait a little bit on your quarterback but still want like a safe QB1 option, I think Dak and Brady are both great picks for where they are currently being drafted.
So I'll tell you this because it's the next two guys between Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. I think Prescott, I feel more excited taking Brady, Stafford, and Rodgers ahead of Prescott because of what they can offer.
I disagree for sure. I mean,
you got to understand, Rodgers came off of QB6 and Stafford was QB5, I think, last year. And now I understand that Rodgers has a similar situation to Dak with his passing weapons. Obviously, you like CeeDee Lamb the best out of everyone there. But in terms of like just excellent quarterbacks, I'm going with Rodgers.
I think NFL for sure. I think fantasy, I'd be happier to take Prescott just because of he provides more opportunity with his legs. But I like all of those quarterbacks in that range for their ADP. I really do. So it's going to be personal preference.
I'm throwing Stafford and Rodgers into QB1 because I think there's no arguing that.
Agreed.
And you're suggesting, what do you think about Stafford ahead of Prescott?
It's hard to talk bad about him coming off of a Super Bowl win, and I think he led the league in passing touchdowns, or no, but he led the league in interceptions, but that's not. Hopefully he can improve on that. He had a ton of passing yards, and he's broken 5,000 passing yards in his career, so yeah. He's a player that throws a lot, and he's on a team that arguably I think Allen Robinson being replaced for Robert Woods could be even better. So, barring injury, if he has him all season, that's an even better outlook for him.
Agreed there. Since we're one player off of closing the QB1 category, let's go ahead and throw him up there, and let's ride. Let's ride with him. That's Russell Wilson.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
I definitely think he is, I'm a little nervous with how he finished last season in Seattle. He kind of didn't look like the guy he was before hurting his finger, and that's a little concerning to me. I know that you're a lot higher on him because you're a Broncos fan and you're excited that they got him. For me, he is QB 12 of 12 on my QB1 board. And I think you have him a little bit higher than me.
I'm an 8. I have an 8. So
yeah, and you have him ahead of Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, as far as
you agree with that, do you stand by that?
I feel better about taking him ahead of those players, but I'm not. I could see Brady getting a better season, but I'd rather take Wilson on this new offense. I mean, 2 seasons ago, QB6. 3 seasons ago, QB3. 5 seasons ago, QB1. Like, he's done this before. He's been top 8. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in his career.
Yeah.
So, I think he's going to an offense that is going to prioritize him, and that offense has so many different options, so I think that he's just going to do great there. I think there was a lot behind the scenes, more than just the injury, with what we know now with him leaving the Seahawks, that probably contributed to him finishing the season in poor form. So I have hope in him, and it could be the fan in me putting him above those type of players, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he's safe QB1 just like the rest of them.
Okay. I can live with that. Let's talk about Tua Tagovailoa. And I think, I mean, to me, I think he's a bye week fill-in. He's definitely, I mean, we've already closed out the QB1 category, so it's kind of spoiling the rest for these guys, but we can make arguments for them being bye week fill-ins. I think Tua's one of those players. He just got Tyreek Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle there. Tons of pass catching upside in the backfield with Chase Edmonds. So, there's a lot to like. I think Miami, similar to Jacksonville, did a good job of, adding weapons for their, potential franchise quarterback. So I like him as a bye week fill-in, and I'm okay with you drafting him as your second QB in drafts.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. He's got great weapons, and he's entering his third season where you hope that he can improve even further. If he could get a fully healthy season with Tyreek Hill now on the team, I think you feel pretty good about him as a bye week fill-in. And I saw a Tyreek Hill quote that he said it almost seemed like Mahomes slander. It seemed weird. He was like, Tua's the most accurate quarterback in the league, or most accurate quarterback I've played with, and it's just like, it's a little interesting. What happened with him and Mahomes? Because that's bold.
That's just noise. That's just noise.
It is just noise. But him voicing confidence in Tua is a little bit reassuring for what their chemistry and connection could be on the field.
Maybe the most accurate left-handed quarterback he's played with. I could see that.
Yeah, maybe.
But,
I feel like that's a pretty safe bet.
But Mahomes can throw with his offhand and still be accurate, so maybe that's not even true.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. You see clips, and I know that you like those clips where Mahomes misses the target because he's not looking, but Mahomes is capable of hitting it with his left hand.
He can. But yeah, Tua safe bye week fill-in, I feel.
Agreed. Ryan Tannehill is next on the board. And that team is Derrick Henry and 10 other guys just trying to block and or hand the ball off to him. So I don't see how you can justify Tannehill being a bye week fill-in. I know you have him as a waiver on your own list. So at the top of the waivers, mind you. I don't think that necessarily matters.
I mean, how much do you disagree with that, considering that I have more in the bye week fill-in? Do you think the placement that I'm putting him is that ridiculous?
Your placement, well, I think your placement of Justin Fields 3 spots below him is a little...
I've been convinced.
Misguided. Yeah.
I have.
I have
hope. I have more hope in Fields advancing. I do.
Okay. So
but we can't... 2 years ago, Ryan Tannehill was QB8. In this same offense, and I know Derrick Henry has become even better.
Regression is a real thing. I mean, Tom Brady is immune to it so far, knock on wood, but regression is a real thing.
But he had a resurgence of his career, and he looked like a great low-end QB going into drafts last year. So I just don't think you can completely forget about that.
But then you watched last season, and he stunk. So we can't discount that either.
I think he is inconsistent, which puts him down below here. But again, we're arguing for a guy I still have on waivers at the end of the day. So
yeah. And personally, I didn't think it really mattered that the waivers be ordered in any particular way, because it's kind of like bye week fill-in. Well, it's different from bye week fill-in in that I'm okay with you drafting a bye week fill-in off my list, but. The waivers are just kind of like, matchup dependent if you're desperate enough, if the circumstances call for it. Let's move on to Carson Wentz. So you share a first name.
I do.
And you put him in the waivers.
I did, and I'm sure you did.
I'm not trying to... I did.
You not?
I definitely did.
Okay.
No, I definitely did. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Wentz very quietly, first off, he's not the player he used to be pretty much before that injury in that Super Bowl winning season that ended his season early.
Yeah.
He was really exciting up until that point, so that really is too bad for his career.
He was an
last
MVP
year he
candidate.
quietly... Yeah, he was. But last year with the Colts, he very quietly had a solid safe QB2 median that would almost put him in bye week fill-in, but I think that you have to discount him going to a worse Commanders team, at least for sure, for his weapons, and I think just in general a worse team. And so, yeah, I think that, if he can get some good connection of Terry McLaurin and even Jahan Dotson starts doing well, I could see him maybe climbing up near the, low-end QB2, but I just don't think his upside's that much higher than that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think he's coming into a similar situation. I don't think it's a major downgrade in team overall, personally. I know that you like Michael Pittman a lot, and I think Terry McLaurin is right there with him in terms of talent and potential. So hopefully for fantasy purposes, it's a better, more consistent year for Terry McLaurin. We'd like to see that, and otherwise, yeah, I think there are better options ahead of Wentz that place him at waivers.
Yeah.
So Zach Wilson, I just think that the Jets drafted some playmakers on that team this year, so hopefully there's some improvement there. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, for instance, on the offensive end, hopefully help Wilson kind of improve as a player, but he's not draftable.
He's not
in any standard sized leagues. He's not draftable.
The Jets did everything they could in the draft to make him more appealing, or whoever ends up playing that position if he doesn't even keep the role for the entire season. I don't know what my prediction on that would be, but we're talking about a player, his rookie season, albeit, but 13 games, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He had some rushing touchdowns, so if he can expand on that, then maybe, but you can't draft him draft him in your drafts. You just can't.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do a speed round here of these last 3 because for both of us, they all belong in waivers. Jameis Winston has had flashes of being a bye-week fill-in type player, so there's obviously potential for that if he comes back healthy and, Michael Thomas is there doing what he does. But I think that there's just, like we keep saying, there's plenty of players ahead of him that you feel fine with as your bye week fill-in ahead of him.
I feel like his ADP is climbing now that Michael Thomas is looking like he could be ready for week 1. And I do think there is something there for him, but, we're talking about the player that in his best season, 2019, over 5,000 passing yards, but the player we're talking about, 33 passing touchdowns, 30 interceptions. So what you can get from Winston can be very, very wild, but he actually had a pretty decent start of the season before his injury. So I'd keep an eye on him on your waivers to see how he's doing, maybe take him. But I don't think you should really draft him per se.
Yeah. And then Seattle's quarterback, some websites list Geno Smith as the starter, some websites say Drew Lock's the starter. Either way, I'm not interested in it, and I think that will show a little bit when we get to our wide receiver rankings, which I've already done, and you've yet to do. But we share the opinion that we're nervous about drafting DK Metcalf.
And back on the quarterback discussion, it seems like the Seahawks, as you said from multiple sources, haven't even fully decided who's going to start. And we're talking about a guy that they probably only got from the Broncos just to make the trade work, not that they wanted him. And they still haven't decided between him and the guy they already had. So yeah, it's not a great situation.
All right, we're going to wrap this up here. Obviously, when it comes to ranking players, people have different opinions. You agree with some, you disagree with others. And depending on how much you like the player, you either agree or disagree in a very significant way. So this is for fun, and hopefully it gave you some insight on players approaching your draft. And if that was the case, you're welcome. And we'll go ahead and sign off here. We've got another video. We're doing running backs next week, so look forward to that, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Stay tuned, everybody. Peace out.
Bye-bye.